Welcome to Views from the Vault. It's your homie Leon here. We have Pierre and Jason Mead co-hosting, and today we have a very special episode. We got Dankadelik in the house. Pierre is gonna take us under the cap with the Dank one.
Nice. So, Martin, it's great to have you on finally, man. We've been chatting a lot this week, but it's great to have you on.
Thank you. Nice to be on.
And I wore my my favorite Dankadelik creation today.
Right on.
Love it. So, Martin, what we usually do is we like to get to know our guests and kind of give everyone out there a chance to know more about those folks that are doing some awesome stuff out in the community and creating. So, I'd love to get you, tell us a little bit about yourself. I just love to hear a little bit more about you.
So just in general, I grew up in Arizona, born and raised in Tucson. I lived there till I was about 22 and then moved to the Phoenix metro area. Been here ever since. So I spent equal amount of time. I think I've been in both. I'm 45, so I might be here a little bit longer than Tucson, but yeah, I mean, Arizona born, Arizona bred, learned to survive in the heat.
That's the thing. I was telling you earlier, my sister and her husband and my niece and nephew live out there. I don't know how you do it. I can't take that heat. Today it was like 80 here though, in New York. So
yeah, I think it was it was like 100 and something a day. It's supposed to be like 113 on Friday or something. It's gonna be hot.
it would have been a perfect day for the rain god.
Yeah, right.
So Martin, tell us, like, obviously you're an artist. So what got you into that? Take us through that.
So I've been drawing since I was a little kid. I mean, ever since I could remember, I've had a pencil or a pen in my hand, and I still have some of the drawings from when I was like 4 and 5 years old that my mom saved. So that's kind of just been my thing, drawing all throughout my whole life. And when I was younger, I did a lot of graffiti. Not really legal, but that's kind of how you build your chops in the street. And then went to art school and just never lost a passion. I mean, I don't do art for work. I mean, I guess if this is considered work, but I don't really it's not my job.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've never put a pencil or a pen down. It's always been in my hand. So
when you see artists out there, right? When you see artists out there, is there any specific artists that you really drew inspiration from, or folks that you looked up to when you were younger?
Unfortunately, without the internet, it was really hard. So really a lot of the different art styles that I would see would be in like Lowrider magazine. So in the back of the Lowriders, they would have this little section where people would send art in. And then, eventually it went into a magazine where it was just an art magazine. And people would send in their art. And, it'd be like of cars or girls or whatever. And then there was also, I don't know if you guys are familiar with, there was like a street magazine called Teen Angels. I don't know if any of you
I'm not familiar with it, no.
It's basically is based out of LA, but is like a gangster style type art book, and people would send their pictures to them and they would publish them, and there'd be drawings in there that people would send either from prisons or just from the street, and then you would see that whole like Chicano kind of art.
Yeah.
So I would look at those. You had to buy them at a liquor store or something. They weren't just like in a Walgreens or whatever. But that was pretty much it. I mean, I knew who Mr. Cartoon was back in the day. I think, a lot of people that were connected kind of knew who he was, with this ear to the street thing. And then, graffiti artists. There was a magazine that I used to read, well, pictures mainly, but Can Control. That was in the late 80s, early 90s as well. And you would see a lot of the street art, and I was more drawn to the West Coast style than the East Coast style, even though it's like the originators, right? Kind of like the East Coast. But like Slick and Risk and those guys,
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been interesting just grabbing all these different influences. I can't really pinpoint it to one person.
What were the key differences between the East and the West Coast style? I could certainly tell you about the rap music, what the difference was from a hip hop perspective, but from an art perspective, when you think about graffiti, like what was the key differences?
You know, I think because the East Coast graffiti style was more of, you know, it was like character based, heavy character based. You actually, in the beginning of like the West Coast graffiti, you actually see a lot of that kind of beat street style, I guess that you would call it, right, from the 80s. Um, but it just has its own flavor. I think the West Coast just incorporates a little bit of the more relaxed attitude, where New York, East Coast is very gritty, and it's like a real street feel.
Yeah.
And that LA graffiti is kind of like more of a laid back.
So that probably has a lot to do with like that probably has a lot of influence over your art throughout the years. Do you still think it connects to the things that you create now?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I think you can tell by the signature on the back of the hat.
Oh, right? Yeah. No, let me show everybody that, because I love this.
Yeah. So that's like
awesome.
legit my tag. It's evolved over the years, you know, it's gotten better. I mean, and then I didn't always write Dank. I mean, I went through tons of names, and you know, that's just kind of the one that stuck. So
why'd you land there?
I don't know. I think I started writing that when I was about 18 years old, and it kind of fit, and my hand style just kind of evolved around that. I mean, a lot of my previous graffiti names started with the letter D. I think I'm just, for whatever reason, I'm drawn to that letter, and it just kind of, it was organic. It completely just came out. And I think the name back then, you know, it's obviously weed. It held a lot more stigma than it does now, right? The time is different than it was back in the late 80s, early 90s.
Certainly not as risque now, right?
No, not at all. I think it's more mainstream, and that's why I was always kind of afraid that like New Era, if they had rules or something on what we're designing, would be like, that's a little, you know, think of a different logo. But everybody seemed cool with it, so I just went with it.
That's nice. So tell us, so you've recently been doing a lot of work with Hat Club. Can you kind of take us on the journey it took to get to that space, and what you're kind of working on now?
Yeah, definitely. So Clink Room. I started as a Clink Room artist, and I followed it for probably about a year or two, and I saw people having their hats created. And mind you, I did not know how to use Illustrator. I didn't know how to use Photoshop or any of those things. And a friend of mine had a bootleg copy of Illustrator. So I loaded it onto my computer, and it was like this tank computer, old computer. But I taught myself how to use Illustrator. I'm still not very good at it, I don't think. Like, I go on YouTube and everybody just flies through stuff, and it takes me like hours to figure it out. But so that's where I started. So what I would do is I would take a picture on my phone, or I'd scan it, you know, like at work, I would scan it to my work email and then email it to myself. And then I would open it up in Illustrator and just put a layer on top of it and kind of try to trace the lines. But, you know, Clink Room, they were doing I think they called it the Hometown League at that point, because they had so many leagues, and, you know, there was always a story behind what you were designing. And so the first hat I did that they really, I mean, I did a bunch of designs that were kind of kicked to the curb, you know, but the cool thing about Casey was he would always give you some feedback on it. So you would get feedback on like, what could you do to do better, right? Like, try this, try that, maybe it'll work. So the first hat that they accepted, and they actually accepted both designs at the same time, but I'll go ahead and show you, it was the Skinwalker. So I don't know if you can see that. And, you know, I don't know if everyone's familiar with the Skinwalker folklore, but, you know, Native Americans in northern Arizona believe that witch doctors can transform into different animals and, kind of terrorize the land, whatever they're going to do. And I thought it was a cool design. So I put a wolf's head with the Native American gentleman in there.
That's super.
So yeah, I was really proud of myself on this one. I mean, I did get a lot of feedback from Casey to kind of do more of a classical Native American look as opposed to what I was doing, which was kind of more like graffiti based.
Yeah.
And so I changed it. And actually, for the reference, I used Indian motorcycles, the little man that they put on the front of the Indian motorcycles. That was kind of my reference point for that face.
Gotcha.
And then I think it was around the same time that the league was still open, and they told me that this one had won. So just really quickly, I designed. I called it the Aslan All Stars, which Hat Club re-released last year.
Yeah.
Is this one here?
Mm-hmm. I have that cap too.
Yeah, and that was the second one. So they kind of won at the same time. So I had two hats come into production. So I was really excited about that because my hats were in production. And I think at the time Hat Club was actually putting those in the store because the internet wasn't like it is now, where it's the Amazon. You click and you get it at your house in 2 days kind of thing. So, but yeah, they sold out really quick there, and that kind of got me introduced to the whole Hat Club thing. And as far as evolving with Hat Club, so last June, I was actually driving to San Diego for vacation, and Danny from Dankadelik reached out to me, and he's like, hey, he vaguely remembered me, and we followed each other on Instagram, and I think that's how he kind of knew from the old posts that I have on my Instagram page. But he said that Hat Club was trying to get a hold of me to send me a couple of hats of the re-release, which was the all black, black visor, black hat. So, through talking with Danny and then communicating with Hat Club, I knew Danny was designing hats already for them. So I was trying to get my way into Hat Club through Danny, and he was a little bit hesitant. I mean, of course I would be too. He's giving me someone's information, right? That he doesn't know me personally, but so that's kind of how it took off. And I talked to John, and we just kind of had some rapport. And I think within a month he sent me a contract, and looked it over, thought it was good, and no pressure to design a bunch of hats at once or anything like that. It was kind of hey, test it out, see how you like it. And I kicked around the idea for a couple of months, what I was going to do. And then I actually painted a painting of Tlaloc, which is the rain god, the Aztec rain god. And I was like, that's what I want to do. So I just put my own spin on it. I did a lot of research on that particular god to kind of feel what I was going to pull out of it and what parts really meant a lot to me and what characteristics of that character should I put on there. And that's kind of how that was born. And it's just been like that ever since. I had the Revolutionary just release. And then I think I have 2 more releases coming out that are original.
Wow.
And I'm working on a couple of more right now. But, with the delay with New Era and the whole COVID thing has kind of stopped everybody from putting out really new stuff. So.
Well, I think there's a lot of folks that are super excited to see what these new ones are going to look like, because the last 2 have been absolutely outstanding, and people are just, they were just fighting over these things. So I can only imagine more coming in the future. I have one more question for you, Martin, before I ask Jason if there was anything that kind of came through while we were talking. Listen, in my other job, in my other world, I interview a lot of people from the creative world. Mm-hmm. And what I'm always really intrigued by is how they're able to almost let things kind of slide off their back, because they get tons of critical feedback. And I'm sure you have in the past too. Mm-hmm. and it's usually very raw feedback about something that's very personal to you. How do you keep yourself in a space where you can accept that feedback and kind of move on and stay positive? Because that's got to be a difficult component in what you do.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, I think being in art school kind of exposed me to that, where they nitpicked everything. And it's really like, I think about art school now and I'm like, what a waste of time, because computers have changed everything that I learned.
Yeah.
Like, so for instance, going back to the criticism that I would receive, um, I had to actually ink a word. The word was quality, right? And the letters were probably like that big, like 5 or 6 inches. They had to be perfect, perfectly round, perfectly straight edges. I mean, you're talking about T-squares and all this thing, and, you know, special pens and all this stuff. And I thought it looked fantastic. And my instructor gave it back, and the whole thing was full of red circles. Like, so, you know, I think that was kind of a shot to the ego. But it taught me that I have to go back and to satisfy what that person wanted. So it was like a double-edged sword, right? Because it wasn't what I wanted, but it was what they expected.
Yeah.
What they. So I think that just kind of helped me get that tough skin.
Yeah. I think that's what's most underrated about creative folks is the you know, it's necessary to have that tough skin, because I mean, it's coming at you from all directions. Even when you put a hat out now, or you create something now, you have thousands of critics, and it's amazing to me to watch the resilience of folks like you that are able to handle that so well. And I can tell why from talking to you today, Martin. I can tell why you're so good at it. Jason, did we have any questions that came up while we were chatting?
Yeah, there's a couple that came up. First off, people just love your stuff, and they really like getting the background on some of these hats, especially the Aslan All Stars and that Skinwalker. They really love the backstory on how you came up with those. Carlos R wants to know: did you ever submit any artwork to Lowrider Mag in your younger days?
I did not. I didn't have the balls to do it. There were so many great artists on there. I never felt like it was on par with anybody, so I never did.
Would you today?
I think I'm in a different place today.
Sure.
So probably not. I actually had a friend of mine. He won 3rd place in one of them. So, and he was older than me. He's probably about 10 years. I haven't seen him in years, but he's probably about 10 years older than me. So at the time I was like 18, he was like 28, but that guy's a fantastic artist. His name is Frank Mills. He's in Tucson. I think he's still there, but that guy was great. So after seeing his picture in person and what he submitted to them, I was like, yeah, I don't think I'm cut out for that for that kind of stuff. I'm not good enough. So
I think you are. But anyway, Pina Lara, he's from Chicago, but he's from Mexico. He wants to know if you're planning on doing any more Mexican-themed hats, maybe some folklore.
Folklore, I'm not sure. I haven't dove into that too much right now with what I'm designing. I can tell you that the next couple of hats that are in the pipeline that I'm working on, the designs right now, are Aztec themed, Mexica themed.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where, you know, I talked to you guys a little bit earlier, right, about what my influences are, what I want to do, and it's definitely my culture is really strong with me, and I've really instilled that in my kids as well. But yeah, I definitely try to do what I would wear. And I know it kind of sounds arrogant a little bit, but I don't design for anybody else. Yeah. I design what I want to wear for me. So I take that approach every time I do something. You know, I know some people, they're like, oh, I'm going to design this because I think it'll appeal to everybody. I design it for me, and hopefully it appeals to more than just myself. But so far it seems to be working that way. So I'm really thankful and happy that everybody's just been, they've given me so much feedback, and it's driving me to want to continue to do this.
So can I ask a question, Martin? There was one question that just came through. Is that Jackie Robinson in the picture behind you?
It is.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Dodger fan. I'm a
That's right.
Dodger.
Dodger fan. So a lot of the Detroit guys, there's a ton of Detroit guys in the hat groups, right? And I'm sure they were excited about the Detroit hat, but you're in fact a Dodger fan.
I am a Dodger fan, so I wear the Detroit hat because it's what I wore growing up. It was like I said, all the graffiti names and my neighborhood name have always started with the D, and
Yeah,
that's representative of me. I mean, since the 90s, I've wore the Detroit. I can't name one Detroit player, so forgive me, guys.
We just had one more question pop up while you're talking there. Josh D wants to know, have you done any tattoos, or has any artist come to you looking to do tattoos for people?
So I actually apprenticed. I was a tattoo apprentice. I don't really talk about it too much because it kind of things just didn't work out. I apprenticed back in, God, it had to be about 2002 for about a year and a half. And the reason that I stopped tattooing is the owner of the shop at the time was bought out. So I was tattooing in Mesa. I'll give a little background to it because it probably just sounds dumb if I don't. Mesa only allows so many shops to be in their Mesa, Arizona. So he was grandfathered in because he was one of the original shops that had been there, and there was a company, a club tattoo that owned a few shops in Arizona. I think they have one in Vegas now that he sold to, and I kind of was left without a job at that point. And now tattoo shops are everywhere. That wasn't like that in the early 2000s. I sound like such an old guy. I think I am, but in the early 2000s, I tried to open up my own tattoo shop, and I tattooed at home in my garage for a little while, and nobody would rent to me. Like, it was the craziest thing. And now, like, you can drive down the street. I'm sure it's like that in every town that everybody lives in. There's a tattoo shop like every mile. Like, I think I was born too early, so I don't know.